What exactly happened down there?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I talked to him and blah, blah, blah. He asked about you guys and da-da-da-da-da, more questions, blah, blah, blah.
Again, thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, of course.
We've been doing this podcast for about a year. My wife just brought that up to me. And we've been growing it kind of slowly, but it seems like authors have been kind of the thing recently. We just had Jim Butcher on, and
I think I watched that one.
Yeah.
Is he the fantasy guy?
Yeah, he does.
Yes, he does. We've had a few fantasy authors on. He's done the Dresden Files. We had Benedict Jaka, who did Alex Verus. We've had a few.
I think that's the one that I watched, the Alex Verus.
Butcher
That was
is
a good
more
one.
of a...
Sorry, go
They're
ahead.
both kind of urban fantasy and kind of set in our time, but with magic and things. It was a very interesting guy. And that particular one, with him, we had a tornado coming through as we started. And so he was like our biggest podcast. And Tristan's an aspiring author, so he had gotten Jim Butcher on. When he got him on, he was like, oh, my God, you're not going to believe this. And I'm like, okay. So then we get him on, and then halfway through, the thing, it stopped recording. And luckily, he was nice enough to come back on. And so we actually have two sections of that podcast, which worked out really good for us. So.
Spliced together.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, that's...
I had hair in the first
unfortunate,
half,
but
and
I mean,
didn't
at
have
least
hair
it
in the
worked
second half. So that's how
Yeah, right.
we measured it, yeah.
Yeah, so we're doing good now. We got everything recording and everything's going. It was a little stressful at first, but it seems like every time, no matter how many times we do this, we have that.
Now, is this live, or do you edit it, or like what's the situation?
This one will be edited and will be coming out Monday
Okay.
morning. Monday is usually our day we release. So we do a few lives, but we don't like to have too many guests on. We don't want to try to. This way, if something you don't want to talk about, you don't want no spoilers or something like that, Tristan goes in and puts it all together for us and makes everybody look good. And that's our number one goal here today, is to make you look good. So that's what we want to do.
Well,
all right.
Good luck. No, I'm kidding.
right. So before we really get going, I just want to let you know, at the end of this, if you would keep your browser open for just a few minutes, you'll see it'll say uploading. So no matter what the quality looks like that we see, that's not what it's being recorded at a much higher quality. So just at the end, we'll say, just watch it for a few seconds. Once it says 100%, we're all good.
Okay.
And if you need
All
a
right,
break,
sounds
or if
good.
you have a timeline you need to be on, I think Tristan said you had about an hour. So we'll work around whatever you need. And so we'll get started. So I'm going to let Tristan do the introductions, because he's the one that's been kind of talking with you the most and has the most information, and then I'll jump in. Yeah.
Well, Something Sinister, which how long have you been doing this for?
Something Sinister in specific, or YouTube in general?
Oh, just YouTube in general.
YouTube in general. I've been on the platform since so I'm 28 now. I've been on the platform since I was like 10, so like way too young. Yeah. But and throughout that time, I've had different channels. But Something Sinister, I started back in 2017. So, yeah, I'm bad at math. That's like, 8-9 years?
Yeah. Going on for a while.
It makes me feel old hearing you say that. It doesn't, when you hear 2017, you think, oh, that was just a minute ago, but it really was a good bit ago. And that's so strange.
Well, yeah, I just came to the realization that my high school reunion, I've been out of high school for 10 years, and so I got like a thing for my reunion, and I was like, has it really been that long? But yeah, no, Something Sinister, 2017. And when I started, it was sort of like, you kind of mentioned, like the horror channels, like Nick Crowley or Nexpo, which, when you think about those channels, it's interesting because, like, I started Something Sinister as, like, more like horror movie related, but when you think about, like Nexpo, Nick Crowley, like, it's not horror movies as much as it is, like, almost like internet horror. So, and true crime, I guess, as well. I didn't make that foray into, those sort of subgenres until semi recently, and that's when I saw, the channel growth, but... Yeah, I've had Something Sinister for a while.
And real quick, your name is Jacob Perrett. Am I pronouncing that right? Perrett. Okay. I think I've mispronounced every last name on this channel so far.
Except for Butcher.
No, you're good, dude.
Yeah. So welcome to the show. And I was really interested. Tristan is at one point here. I got so many things going on, and I really wanted this to be something to grow. But I, putting the time in is hard. I'm at the middle of the night working on things. So I said, Tristan, you're going to have to start working on some of these guests for me, man. Start reaching out and putting this together so we can keep episodes going. And since then, Tristan and I are both, I've always been a pretty avid reader, and I've always pushed my children to read, and some of the classics. Frankenstein, one of my favorites of all time, and all of my kids get a copy of that at some point for Christmas. And so when he said he had a horror writer on, I was very interested, and I've been listening to your channel as I've been driving around today trying to pawn off some silver and gold to everyone. So luckily I was able to get that all done. But those things have changed over the years, just cinema and how people interact with entertainment in the modern world is so different. I'm much older than both of you guys, of course. But looking back and how far we've come, there's so many different ways to get your stuff out there now. And with my wife, she's a lot younger than me, and she's been doing a gaming on TikTok and different things like that, YouTube. And when I first started looking into that, I'm like, no, wait a second. What? You're going to play a game and get paid? And how? And I started explaining that to people, and they're like, why did our parents always get onto us for playing video games, so many years ago?
Right.
But,
it's one of those things, like, I'm from a rural area. So, like, the concept of being a YouTuber, for example, is, like, completely foreign. I was at the dentist a couple weeks ago, and I was talking to the lady, and she was like, so do you have insurance? And I was like, no, I'm self-employed. And of course she asks, what do you do? And I say, I'm a YouTuber. And she's pauses for a moment, and she's like, that's cool. So like, you do DoorDash too, or like, and it's hard
all
for
one
people
thing to them.
Yeah, to sort of like, I guess, conceive like how it works,
It's
or how you make money from that.
They see it more as a sort of side job at this point than an actual career. I imagine it's hard to sell that to a crowd who's not actually been immersed in that, who doesn't understand the sponsorships and I think also our generation, we grew up seeing people like Markiplier and such, these people who built these massive presences solely online, and they can actually sustain themselves off of that. But I mean, I think we're the first generation to really sort of see that in actual time.
Yeah, and it's interesting because that you say, Markiplier, for example, because typically, I've had, fans and or whatever reach out to me, and they're like, oh, I am inspired by you and your work on YouTube. I want to be a YouTuber myself. And I feel like the answer to like, oh, what kind of YouTuber or whatever, it's almost always gaming, which is
really
interesting because, of course, who doesn't want to play video games and make money doing it? But that's a particularly hard avenue to break into because everybody wants to do it.
Yeah. The early guys getting into it that were actually stuck with it, those are the ones that kind of set the stage. But it's so much harder now. Getting in. I used to train fighters, and back when I was training fighters, when we would go to a show, the promoters would always want a female fight, a woman fighting, and that was so scarce back then. And it was kind of just getting going, and any woman who had any kind of experience at all could just walk through the competitive, But then people started getting into it, and now the competition level there is astronomical compared to what it started. So it is definitely going to be difficult for people to break into that.
With your niche, now, what would you call your niche? I've been referring to it as SpookTube, but I don't know if that's at all accurate. Like, I've not seen a name put to it. Like, you have you have a lot of peers in the field, like Nextbo is probably a big one. Chilling Scares, arguably Windigoon, people like that. Do you find yourself difficult to compete with the competition there, or do you think it's a pretty there's plenty to go around situation?
Yeah, well, it kind of like I mentioned, with gamers, for example, that is a market that is so unbelievably saturated. Like I said, good luck breaking into that. But with that being said, I would argue that most markets are oversaturated. Like even a SpookTube's funny. I've never heard that before, but we'll go with that. SpookTube is like, there are the big ones like we've talked about before, but like even to this day, like a part of my I don't know, job, I guess, in my mind, is to study, countless channels, what works, what doesn't work, and apply that to my own. And I still find channels that are doing well that I've never heard of before,
Really?
that are in that niche. And, they're not always like, Nexpo or Nick Crowley, like 1 million subscribers, but like, sort of my size channels. And I'm like, I didn't even know that you existed, but like we make, the same content. So I guess in terms of like standing out, I will say that with this sort of oversaturation of content, yes, there's more than ever before, but there's also, I feel like, more bad content than ever before, or poorly made, or like ripped from someone else, or AI is the big thing. Part of the reason why I actually started showing my face more was because people were like, "Oh, he's AI, and I'm like, "I promise you, I'm not AI."
Yeah. That whole thing is just swooped in so quickly that it's hard to even get,
I've had time to adapt to
our
it.
minds around it, and also how to regulate it and things like that too. So it's gonna be tough.
You can really tell. I feel like
can.
I can, because like I've watched so much, where I start a video and I'm like, this is not a person. Like, and not only not a person, but like, say what you will about AI, different creators use it for different things. Some may write their scripts, but they have the AI speak it because they don't like their voice, whatever. But I can tell when like it wrote it, it recorded it, and those channels are the worst in my opinion. So competing with those, it's not as difficult.
The writing wise, all of it sounds the same. It would be like if everything was written by Stephen King, you could tell that it was all Stephen King. Even though he's a good writer, it's at least that's where I feel on it. I can, with the writing, I can tell almost immediately in that regard.
It always seems so.
Yeah.
It seems too clean to me. it seems very clean. Like it's, you can tell that it's been puzzled together. So
Horror.
We'll see how that
goes.
goes.
The best thing to do.
Now, I really would like to get into your book and your channel and excuse me, but I always like to pick the brains of people like you, because what you do is so different than, let's say, 90% of everybody else in the world. The 9-to-5ers, the people out there working, at the restaurants and things like that. Yours, like I was talking with Butcher, and I just wanted to know. I said, so how disciplined are you on yourself? Is this something that, obviously you're taking it very serious. You have to do that.
Yeah.
What kind of sketch do you have? Is this? And I guess one of the things is, do you work other jobs, or is this just your main gig right now?
YouTube is my main job, my only job. Yeah.
So as far as your discipline on that, do you have like, I get up in the morning, I do this, or do you just let things kind of come to you naturally?
Yeah. So I'm sort of in a situation right now where, as of right now, it's, I try and work like between 12 in the afternoon to 8 at night. That's typically like my most productive. But at the same time, when it comes to like things like, say, my books or my films, sometimes I'm working even later than that, because that's like sort of an inspiration thing. Whereas like YouTube is much more of a structure, I guess, or I've made it more of a structure, or more my job. But I don't wake up and do the 9-to-5 thing. I find that I just I don't know. I guess it's kind of one of the spoils of working for yourself is you can do whenever, and my body naturally just wants to be productive from 12 to 8,
which is still that's a full-time job still at that. So
yeah.
Do you find this is something that I've ran into a little bit, and more so my wife has, that and she's taking a little break because she's just recently found out she's pregnant. So here I am.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. My exact word. But,
wow.
So I have a 25-year-old, which you're talking to. I have a 19-year-old and a 9-year-old turning 9 tomorrow, and then I'm sorry. So Needless
my
to say,
goodness.
I've got my next.
I would say you're a busy
20
guy.
Years. Yeah, very busy. But she would be when she was running full time. She was doing okay. She was doing pretty good, but no one took her serious. No one, family wise, they're like, "Hey, can you run over and pick up so and so and take them over to there?" And she's like, "Well, I'm scheduled on for this today." And well, you're not really working. They never took her serious, and it made it really difficult for her to get that point across. But finally they started coming around, and it's generally the older generations, my age and even older, like not taking what they're doing serious. But I see this in a lot of things though, and I'm not trying to take up all the time, but I see this a lot too in some of the other things I do. Like we do a lot of coin collecting and collectors. I deal with a lot of people doing that, and then you got people like in baseball cards and things like that. You got to start seeing the generations, as the new generations start to come in, you got to be pliable to understand that they're going to want something different. And it may not even be something that I like or not. My youngest son and I, we do Pokemon cards together. And honestly, I can't tell you what the game is about. But we are constantly buying Pokemon cards every day and having them graded. So I think it's important to stay connected to your audience, and that audience changes as generations grow old and new generations come in. You have to be able to know that demographic. I talked to a billionaire one time, and he's like, he was in his 80s and he had no clue what things were. He says, "So you tell me what they want, and I'll fund it, because I don't care what they want. It's with them, so it's not for me." I think keeping that in mind is important.
Now, one thing I did want to ask, though, about the book. I've been wanting to read it. They eat you from the inside.
Yep.
So firstly, is it paranormal horror? Is it more just purely psychological? I've read a little bit about it, but I've not gotten into it yet.
It's a... told through the perspective, mainly the perspective of the main character, and so I guess psychological in that sense, but there is a very physical threat in it, so no paranormal or anything like that.
So with your YouTube channel, there's a sort of modern style of horror that I've noticed pop up recently with those kind of channels. Do you draw from that style of horror for this book, or is it much more like a traditional horror book?
I guess, can you elaborate on like, what do you mean by, like, I guess, modern horror?
It's not necessarily just purely modern, just that internet style of horror. You see it in analog horror, you see it in the kind of content you do. It has a greater focus on, it's hard to pin down what it does exactly, but it's a lot of something's gone wrong. Look at things like Gemini Home Entertainment that heavily focus on the idea of something getting worse and worse and worse, and the fear and horror of watching that happen. That's the best way I could put it, maybe. I don't know if I'm doing it justice or not.
No, I know what you're saying. I don't know that the book is necessarily, I guess, modern by that definition. But I will say that I would characterize it as something I hear talked a lot about, more so in the film scene, is Gen Z horror, which I feel like encapsulates, you know what, I feel like Gen Z would probably encapsulate like things like analog horror and ARGs and stuff like that. Have you ever heard that phrase before, Gen Z horror?
I have not.
So it's like it's a what I guess I would characterize as more of like a modern contemporary spin on the genre. Basically, people Gen Zers like me are now old enough to be creating content, so you have this generation of people who grew up on the internet and were reading things like creepypastas and stuff like that, and are now sort of taking the scary things on the internet and conceptualizing them in things like Gemini Home Entertainment or other analog horrors like that. But it also deals with like the idea of like I guess more modern fears of the generation, like the isolation that comes with social media and being disconnected from everyone. Things like, or ideas of gender and sexuality, which that is more so, I think, a play of They Eat You from the Inside, because we're following two gay men, and basically the main character coming to accept, himself. So very, I would consider that to be Gen Z, and I guess modern in that way. But there's no really, I guess, like take on technology or anything like that.
Okay. Now, besides They Eat You from the Inside, of course, do you have any recommendations for Gen Z horror? Especially books.
Books. I'd have to think about that. Let me think about that. I have. See, I was going to tell you guys. So it's a little bit confusing because I'm a YouTuber. I'm an author, and I'm a film guy. So my film knowledge is like really, I could give you Gen Z horror movies, but my book, I'm not as I guess seasoned in literature as I am film. But I'm trying though. Like you mentioned Stephen King. Like of course, I love Stephen King, read Stephen King, but yeah, let me think about that. There's actually there's one book right now that is sitting on my shelf that I've been meaning to get to. Are you familiar with what's it called? You Weren't Meant to Be Human.
Is that the
I've
game?
seen some of that.
Yeah, it's got like the cover with like the worms on it and stuff like that.
I've seen
it is
that.
a video game,
I think
right?
I've seen the covers. Yeah.
What is it?
Is it a video game? Or is it a book?
It's a book.
Okay,
sorry.
I'm thinking of No, I'm Not a Human, which is a video game. It's very similar.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would say probably something like that, because from what I gather from it, it follows the story of a trans character. But I would also say, now that I'm thinking about it, the works of like Eric LaRocca. He did. It was a great first story, and it was a great title. Things I gotta look it up. Things have changed since we last, or things have gotten worse since we last spoke, is what it's called.
I think I've seen that too.
That is a fantastic book. It's told primarily through, we're talking about sort of the technological aspects of things, through like old chat room logs between two characters. It's fantastic.
I think you're also seeing things. So, I guess from my perspective, my generation, of course, growing up in the '80s, a lot of people were still very homophobic, and there was some racism.
Sure,
not as much as maybe some actually put it out there, but yeah, there's some very bad things happening there. And now that you are now in the modern world, though, we see that in our day-to-day lives, and to exclude that from any type of entertainment makes it not feel real anymore. It's almost like when you see people and they don't have their phones, and I don't know how to get around that one, but you don't go, if you're watching a movie, very rarely do you not see, you'll never see like someone's phone laying on the table, or I think that's too is keeping that in mind when you're kind of trying to put that content out there to make it feel real. If you've grown up with these things in your life, it's going to feel awkward if it's not there. So.
Yeah,
it's not quite the same, but I've seen a lot of people be like, oh, there's a gay character in this book, it's pushing an agenda. Well, I'm thinking if it's set in modern day America,
exactly,
any friend group, every person is going to know at least one gay person. I think it's unrealistic to not include it. It's not even a matter of inclusion. It's a matter of, well, this is unrealistic for modern day America.
Yeah,
right. And like that's the thing, is like that was a thought that I had when I was writing the book, because not that this particularly matters, but I am not a gay man, but I am writing about gay men, and I was like, is this going to be perceived the wrong way? But I think at the core of it, and why I wanted to write the book, is because he is sort of dealing with a crisis of himself, or feeling separated from the world because of his sexuality. But how many of us have at one point in time throughout our lives felt isolated or alone, or like we are not understood? And it's not even something that you can change. It's just I am an inherently kind of a weirdo, like, you know what I mean? I can't change that. And so I think that's why I was like, that's why I want to tell this story, not because I'm trying to push an agenda or this or that, but I'm like, I I understand this character. You know.
Well, I think that you hit it there pretty head on. It would be the similar, like we had Jim Butcher on, and he's not a detective wizard either, but he can still speak to that, you know. And yeah, I think that's important that we were able to do that. It's I can remember. I'm a big fan of Seinfeld, and I can remember one episode where someone thought that Jerry Seinfeld was gay, and he says, "I'm not," but there's nothing wrong with that. You know, they had that whole thing back then, and now I think sometimes it goes one or the other way. Either they completely leave it out, or they push the agenda so strong that you can't really get into what's going on. It's like Tristan was saying, when I go out with friends, we don't. You know, some of them may be gay or trans or whatever, but we don't sit around and talk about that. We talk about what we did today, or the monster behind the counter. You know, whatever happens there. So.
Sure.
In my experience, it's often done more tastefully in non-mainstream media as well. Like I can point to several. I can put several works that have trans characters where it's done in a way that doesn't feel. It feels very nuanced, but doesn't feel like it's being shoved your direction. It just feels part of the story, and I can respect that.
Yeah.
Now,
so when Tristan was telling me about you, though, he says, "I think we got another author on." I'm like, "Great, maybe we should just do a podcast for authors." And then I'm doing my day-to-day life, and then he goes, "Wait a second, and then he says, "Well, also he's a YouTuber." And I'm like, "Oh, well, cool, that's great." And then later as the day goes on, he says, "This guy's got a movie," and I'm like, "Well,
done it all.
Got it all. I got to meet this guy. He's busier than me."
Yeah, gonna have a comic book or something next, or a play on Broadway for all we know.
So,
yeah.
Your book, it's available on Amazon. I've seen it there. Have you considered doing an audiobook yet?
I have, and I actually, given, you know, my YouTube and people like my voice and whatnot, I was going to narrate my own book, but I started, and then I stopped, and I can't quite remember why. Maybe I was like, "Is anyone gonna be interested in this?"
I mean,
you
I
know,
would definitely buy it.
Yeah,
I think it would.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people who. There's got to be some degree of crossover with your audience of people who would read a horror book, and you know, if I found out that one of my favorite fantasy YouTubers was narrating a fantasy book, I like both of those things. Sure. I feel like it's the same in this regard.
Yeah.
Now,
no, it's definitely something that I would be interested in doing.
Okay.
So, how do you market this stuff? I mean, do you have a team, or is it primarily? I mean, you obviously have a lot of experience in YouTube, so is it, you know, do you market it that way, or how's that work?
So it's interesting because, as I mentioned before, I've had multiple different YouTube channels throughout my life, and one of it wasn't as big as Something Sinister, but I had a sort of like a vlog channel, and it was very much following my day-to-day life, getting to know me. You know, I did trendy stuff. I was a teenager, so I was like a teenage heartthrob, you know, like type channel. And that audience, I found, was really invested in me as a person. Whereas with Something Sinister, there's a lot more, I feel like, detachment. And therefore, just because, you know, I have as many subscribers as I do, it doesn't mean that they're necessarily interested in me as a person, if that makes sense, because there is that detachment. So you would think, you know, oh, well, marketing, you know, your book or your film has to be really easy because you have this big audience, but it's an audience that is, I feel like, more there for the content and less for the person, which is totally fine. I'm not, you know, saying, oh, pay attention to me or whatever. I think I just so happen to be an artist in other aspects. So, I mean, I do you know, plug the book and stuff like that in the Something Sinister episodes, and that has sort of, you know, generated some interest, but it's not like, you know, I have 100,000 subscribers and I sold 100,000 copies of my book. So I don't know, I guess, like, what the best way to go about it is. And I always sort of look at it as like Something Sinister and YouTube is like my job. It's how I make money. So it has to be. It's sort of more restricted to like. I'm creating content that people want to watch, not always, the type of content that I want to make per se. But I do enjoy, what I make. But say like I'm really into Spider-Man right now. I'm not going to make a Spider-Man video, because no one's going to watch it. Whereas in my creative endeavors, i.e., my films and my book, I feel a little bit more less like I'm going to write this or film this because I want it to be a blockbuster or a bestseller. I kind of just do it for me, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
And so, which also makes it hard to market because, well, it kind of depends. I feel like with books are a lot more personal, or feel a lot more personal than films. Because, a book is a singular author, whereas a film, well, yes, I'm the writer and director of most of my projects. I have a team with me. So, I don't know, the books feel almost more personal.
I'm a huge film fan. I have always loved movies. I consider it one of the most important art forms. And people laugh at me when I say that, but how many times you've watched the movie and it taking you so many different directions emotionally, and you can take out all the CGI, you can take out all the special effects and the makeup and everything. If you have a great actor and a great story, you'll get involved with it. I was listening to a podcast the other day where we were talking about some of the actors. I can't remember her name. Beast in Me. It was a series that was on, I think, Netflix or anything. And wish I could remember her name. But she got so into character that you don't know who she is. It's like any actor, you know who they are, but they're so good at what they do that you forget and you get lost and you get excited and you get mad and you get all these things come to you. So like you were saying there with your team, even though you may have been a writer or even produced it, each individual person is going to put a little bit of themselves there, I guess. When I was talking to Butcher about Harry Dresden, his main character, listening to him tell me about Harry Dresden was like, that's not Harry Dresden that I know, because I read his book and I put it into my context. So, that's very interesting that you say that about how that grows. And another thing interesting you said is that I find things that I do that I enjoy doing, and I try to not cross contaminate. I don't want to, push one thing or another. And so the things that I really enjoy doing is by myself quietly down here in the studio. And I try not to. I don't want to market it because I'm afraid that if I market it and it hits, then I'm going to start wanting to do it to make money. And the next thing I know, that old thing. Yeah. So
with the
on the film side, do you? So you said you're pretty knowledgeable there. Do you pull from some of the classics, or is it kind of loosely inspired as a whole?
Well, first of all, I love all things horror. So like you mentioned Frankenstein earlier. I have downstairs. I have the Universal Monsters. It was like the first posters that they put out for Dracula, the Wolfman, and Frankenstein. Those are like really like foundational for me. In terms of just getting me into the genre and everything like that. I think Frankenstein is like the Boris Karloff one I'm talking about. I think that's like the film that I've seen the most ever. But I also I recently watched Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein, which I loved it.
I would say this about that: it was an event at my house because I'm such a fan. And I wanted all of my children to be able to watch it, so I refrained from watching it for 2 weeks because they couldn't get over it. But it was a very well done.
Oh, so you have watched it now?
Yeah, I'm telling you, movies is something that I can talk about for hours. But that film was important to me to see because honestly, I don't really, the Frankenstein over the years has become kind of comical, the Halloween version, the cartoon version.
I mean, yeah.
And for me, it was when I read the book, it horror, I think, and too, something about horror is that we often take it too lightly. It's like there can't be depth there in some way. It's always, maybe jump scare or some of those things, and that's all fine. But, in some of these stories, there is a lot of meaning and depth put in there.
Yeah.
I've seen it referred to as literary horror that has something to say, versus just, oh, there's the ghost, there's a guy with a knife, we're gonna make a scream kind of horror.
Yeah. Well, one of my favorite movies of modern is Mary Shelley's Mary Shelley. I don't know if you've seen it. It's not a horror movie at all, but it talks about how she what was she, 16, and she was right. Yeah. They got snowed in, and that's when she wrote Frankenstein, and she actually used her husband to promote it as his book. But to get into all the things that she was dealing with at that, and then to be able to write that book in such a of course, there again, it could be just me reading into, just like I did Dresden, is this man and God complex, all these things that we can put into something like that. Is, I guess that's an individual take on everything there.
Yeah, and you're sort of talking about we're talking about horror movies, and just like, obviously horror is a spectrum. I like to watch slasher movies, but I also we're talking about Frankenstein, which is a horror movie, but it made me cry.
Exactly.
And for whatever reason, that some people don't like that for some reason. Some people just want to go and watch people get chopped up and stuff like that, and don't want to feel something. I mean, I think there's a time and place for both, but no, I bawled my eyes out during that movie just because of how beautiful it was.
Very powerful movie.
Speaking of that,
so sometimes I've said, I'm sorry, Tristan. Sometimes I've talked to people in the past and said, look, we watching a movie. Well, that wasn't very realistic. Well, yeah, I don't want realistic. I see real every day. I want to get away from it. I want to be absorbed. But then there are times like that.
I've seen the term internal consistency used a lot. It doesn't have to be realistic, but it can't contradict itself. It has to say, if I walked in to Frankenstein and suddenly Frankenstein could grow wings and do this and this and this, that might take me out of it. But the idea of a man being brought back to life doesn't bring me out of it, because the story is telling me, hey, believe this for the length of the movie.
Yeah.
But you mentioned the pushback to the more nuanced side of horror, with you making, as well as you mentioned, Gen Z horror as your subgenre. Have you got any pushback for that with your works, or do you feel like you get away with it more?
Can you ask me that one more time? Sorry, I think I have an answer, but I just want to make sure I'm actually answering it.
The themes you're bringing to your movies, because we've mentioned before that horror, a lot of people want it to solely be just a splatterfest, fun, good time. Do you get some pushback for trying to bring these more nuanced themes into your movies, or do you think that you found an audience that accepts it?
I think I don't know if pushback is the right word, but maybe people are more likely to not watch my stuff, or just sort of you're scrolling on Tubi or whatever, you read the little synopsis and you see something. I think I try and make films and work that are challenging, or that challenge people, and I think that a lot of the times when it comes to entertainment, people want the escapism and don't want to perhaps be challenged or confront something within themselves. That's personally one of the reasons why I love art. Is I use it obviously as a way to express myself, but also to confront. And specifically, it's funny that you say that. So the current film that I sent you is called Photo Negative, but I had one prior to that called Sigil, and I remember someone had asked me. I was at like a Q&A afterwards. They had asked me if there was going to be a sequel, and the film is like very not franchisey, very confronting the demons of oneself, and I was like, absolutely not. There's not going to be a sequel.
But you could do a sequel and just go pure slasher. That would be really funny, I feel like, to have this very tasteful, very beautiful piece, and then the sequel. Almost at that point of being a commentary on how franchises are treated. I could see that being very funny.
Well, that's like kind of what I feel like they did with what's his name? The guy who directed the Joaquin Phoenix Joker movies.
Joker 2.
Todd Phillips. Yeah. Like, watching the first one, and then I feel like the second one was, like, just a complete middle finger to, like, people who were inspired by or glorified or saw themselves in Arthur in the first one. You know, which when you think about that, yeah, he's a loner and he's, you know, this and that, but, like, to see yourself in him is perhaps a bit concerning.
Yeah. So
you know, it's interesting to think about.
That's an interesting topic, interesting movie you put into. Tristan and I have a friend of mine, and of course then Tristan knows him as well, who almost, other than, you know, the mayhem, pretty much I see him exactly in that character. That you know, that loner that just can't seem to find his place in the world, and you know the turmoil he has in his mind trying to figure that out. That was, you know, Joaquin Phoenix is yeah. So maybe we'll get him in on your next show.
Totally, yeah.
Do that. I'm thinking about this now. This is interesting. I just had sort of like a mental epiphany or something. One of my favorite films is Taxi Driver.
Yes. And
one of the reasons that I like it is because I literally just contradicted myself. I feel like I sympathize with Travis in that, because I know what it's like to, you know, feel alone and whatnot. Not that I'm gonna, you know, kill someone's pimp and, you know, save a prostitute or anything like that, but
just between us.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I think
no, I get
I don't know. It's interesting.
I think it's we all can see ourselves. I think every person can see a little bit of themselves in a villain or a tragic character or a unhealthy character. But there's a difference between seeing those aspects of ourselves and saying, yes, he's doing the right thing because of those aspects.
Right.
So I think that's very...
It's more understanding where the character is coming from, and you know, sympathizing. You know, there was a show out called Monsters, and it dealt with Ed Gein. I don't know if you're familiar with Ed Gein.
Yeah, dude. That's a thing where, like, I started watching it with my wife, and her specifically, I'm not going to throw her under the bus, but I will.
Yeah.
Specifically, like, looked over to me at certain parts and was like, I feel so bad for him. And it's interesting, the complexity of, like, that guy did horrible things. Yeah. We should not be feeling, you know, we should not be sympathizing or, you know, but, like, at the same time, you watch a show like that and, like, I don't know what it is, you can't help but see the humanity in it, you know? I don't know.
That's exactly where I was going with that, was that at the end of that you know, show, you see him and you sympathize with him while he's in the, you know, the mental institution he's in, and everyone there starts to like him and talk to him, and at some point, you know, you lose that connection of what he's done. It is very interesting how I've always been a fan of the bad guy. I'm always rooting for the bad guy. Always. I don't know. Maybe there's a little something going on there too, but you can sympathize and understanding that even though he's the one that perpetrated all that, there was something else. You know, he was as much of a victim, and I know that's really hard. And if your family member was one that was that, I mean, impossible probably to be able to see that. But understanding that he himself was a victim, you know, in that situation, and how his mind, what those things were going on, tortured him as much as he, you know, potentially tortured his people around him. So.
The biggest thing is I've seen. I'm not trying to talk too much, but I want this to highlight you. But something that's been mentioned is how we often will demonize people who are capable of doing these kind of things. But there was a good argument I saw that said, if we prioritize, instead of making them hate themselves for what that aspect of themselves, instead we prioritize on getting them help, there'd be a lot less murders in the world. So by demonizing these people, we're actually making the problem worse for everyone.
Yeah.
Think about Tristan. I think did you watch the most recent Something Sinister on Andrea Yates?
She is the lady who I believe drowned her children, right?
Yeah.
Yes, I did.
And this is interesting because people in the comments, you know, they're thanking me for treating her side of the story with grace and sympathy, and that wasn't something that, like, I set out to do when writing the script. Like, it wasn't like, you know, because at the end of the day, she drowned her 5 children. Yeah. That's absolutely terrible.
Yes.
I remember that happening.
Yeah. But I think it's interesting, I guess, that a lot of people, you know, in the comments, you know, are sort of softer with her, but are you know, more inclined to, and I'm not saying they're wrong, I don't know, it's just an observation, blame, you know, her husband, you know, who was not following her doctor's orders, or blaming her doctor, and blaming what's his name, Michael Warnicki, who had sort of potentially warped her mind to fear for her children's eternal fate of going to hell, which then in turn might have caused her to, well, I'm going to drown them while they're young so that they don't go to hell. You know what I mean?
I think with someone like that, now I do think this was a more extreme case. It's similar to the idea of people saying, oh, we shouldn't have violent video games. It'll encourage people to do bad things. Some people, I think, are at the point where there will be something that gets to them unless we give them help. It's not a matter of the content. Though, with the guy being like, oh, yeah, you're going to go to hell for any little thing, that does affect the person, I imagine. And the fear of the people you love most suffering forever, that I can't imagine.
Anytime anything heinous happens, there's multiple blame to be out there in the world. There's reasons that all these things happen. It reminds me of one of our first podcasts. I don't know if third or fourth or fifth or something like that. We had a local group that does horror film. They have a pretty I can't remember the name of it downtown.
Was it Tallgrass Studios?
What's the name of their? What was that?
Tallgrass? Was it Tallgrass Studios?
Yeah, Tallgrass Studios, and they were such fun. I mean, they were probably my most fun podcast, and I still get in touch with them. Her name was Edie, and I'm trying to think of the other lady's name. And they did one called The Cat Sitter.
The Cat Sitter. It was a horror comedy.
Okay.
It was very good. It was funny. Yeah. So, but they're very.
I'm gonna look that up.
Yeah. They've got another couple things going. They're just. I would just say this about them. They're a lot of fun. They're a lot of fun to hang out with.
Gotcha. I'm making sure we got that right on the Tallgrass Studios.
Yeah. So,
Tallgrass Studios. Okay.
Yeah, they're just getting started. So you got to keep that in mind. You know, they got a, but they've they enjoy what they do. You can tell that. I'll definitely check that out tonight. So as far as the book, so the movie is probably, when is it going to be released? The photo negative.
We're looking at potentially summertime, possibly early fall. It's again, it's sort of like navigating this landscape. My producer on the film, his name is Elliot Gibson, and he is, I'm not sure how long he's been producing for, but Sigil was one of the first movies that he acquired. So him and I together are sort of trying to, you know, because navigating this landscape as a blockbuster film, especially getting your film out on physical, like, is nearly impossible. Not nearly impossible, but it's very difficult because no one buys physical copies of anything anymore. Right. So we're just trying to, figure out how to best go about that because, it's difficult. But we're looking at the latter half of the year.
And where would people be able to find, Sigil? It's out, correct?
Sigil, I wish I could talk more about it. We're talking to a distributor right now, so it'll hopefully be out on streaming soon.
Cool.
Okay.
I want to clarify real quick.
I was just trying to make sure that people. Yeah, I was just trying to make sure that
Highgrass Studios.
Yeah, Highgrass.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, we'll throw them up just to give them a little plug there, and we need to get them back on there. A lot of fun. And then we'll also, of course, add all your information down below, and Tristan will throw up some of the art and things that you have.
Absolutely.
I was just trying to make sure that people knew how to find it. That's one thing in today's world. When I was growing up, you had 3 channels, and we just recently watched the movie about Elvis, and I know that sounds crazy, but the guy who played it, I would recommend. It's not what you think it is. It's a really good movie, and you see the just turmoil he went through. But I was trying to make my youngest son understand that time. Now, let's not put me too old. That's not my time. That's the time before me. But that time, when you had someone like him, he was the biggest star in the world, and there was very few people that were like that. There were not, there were not even genres then. It was just movie. There was not multiples.
Right.
And that level of fame was, unheard of. And still, but today, it seems like it's like you were saying, so saturated. it's hard to find things. It's
It's
really hard to
overwhelming.
locate things.
Yeah.
And there's so many different genres that there's superstar level people out there that lots of people have never heard about.
Sure.
In the 1960s, you said Elvis, everybody in the entire world, about
Right.
him. And now it's, on a daily basis, my kids are showing me stuff. We're talking. Tristan shares a lot of things with me, and I enjoy a lot of them. Some of them I'm like, what? Wait, what? But yeah, it's really hard to find things like that. So, how would people find something like your movies, your books, and of course the YouTube channels? That's going to be fairly easy. But
Yeah.
how would we? Find
Yeah. Well, currently my book is only available on Amazon, so that's a pretty easy one. I just have one book so far. In terms of my films, again, I've had features out since like 2018. If you really want to seek those out, just type in my name. It'll either take you to, I'm pretty sure like on my IMDb will have all of that information on those older ones, but most of them are on like either Tubi or Amazon or platforms like that. Just search my name. But the two ones that I'm most proud of, Sigil and Photo Negative, unfortunately aren't quite out. Sigil hopefully going to be out soon. I don't know. We'll talk, or we're talking to some people about that. But Photo Negative will be a little bit longer. But yeah, and again, my YouTube, Something Sinister. It's just type in Something Sinister.
Yeah, sure. We can, and I'm sure we could probably link from there too.
Well, we're definitely.
Yeah.
On that, real quick. Go ahead, Tristan.
I would say we're running low on time. I had two questions I wanted to ask before we finished up.
Sure.
Firstly, you mentioned how your art is more of your passion project. Do you think you're going to stick with horror for the rest of your life, or do you think you're going to kind of mess around with other genres with your movies and your books?
Yeah, so I've made 2 unreleased drama films. I love drama films, but I found that so that could be a potential future endeavor. But I have found that marketing a drama as nobody creator, whatever you want to call me, is much more difficult than, say, horror. Take like Blair Witch, for example, a film that was made for $10,000-$15,000, whatever, and is made millions. I don't know if you can really find another genre that is capable of making so much with so little, which is why I think I'm also just drawn to horror in general for whatever reason. So I think for the imminent future, it'll probably, or for foreseeable future, it'll probably be horror.
Now, with horror, though, it very easy to expand into other genres, though, because horror, it can be on its own. You can have a horror in space. You can have a horror story with superheroes. You can do it with almost any other genre. Is that something you might explore, or do you think you're going to want to stay very primarily where it fits very comfortably purely into the horror category?
So the way that I currently operate is I try and do a film a year, and then the next year I do a book, and then a film, and I sort of alternate. So it is my year to write another book, and I don't know if this is going to come to fruition. It's very early in the works, but this one is horror, but it is also more focused on a sort of apocalyptic, post-apocalyptic fallout aftermath sort of thing.
One of my favorites.
So yeah, that's I guess to answer your question, yes, if you would consider that to be.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, I had one more question, and this is going to be me taking your very nuanced, well-written works and try to shove them into the very nerdy category. And I think it works. I've asked every author we've had this question. Are you familiar with the who would win subculture of the internet? Oh no, Hulk would beat Superman kind of.
Oh, yeah.
If we were going to have some, playground debate about one of your characters, it could be supernatural, could be a killer, could be just a person, and someone else, and it does not work with your stories at all from what I can tell, but I think it makes it fun. What would you do with that?
Like, so I have to come up with like a versus scenario.
We're gonna do a Freddy versus Jason movie with one of your characters. It could be anyone you've written. Could be the random cashier.
So I will take. It's hard because you guys haven't seen Photo Negative. There's a character in Photo Negative named Arthur who is a rich boy, kind of like almost think like yuppie, or like American Psycho. Like he has so much money and so little to do that he uses his money to I guess take advantage of other people. He's a real dirtbag. So I will take him versus let's say I'll say the father character in They Eat You from the Inside, who is this backwoods hillbilly. We'll take the polar opposites, the rich, white boy and the backwoods hillbilly, and we'll see.
I guess you're the first person I've seen
this.
It's true. The first person I've seen to use it for a catharsis purpose, to say, yeah, I want to see this guy get fucked up, kind of energy. I like that.
Yeah.
So I have like another hour's worth of questions for you, but I'm going to throw just a few out there, and if at any time you need to stop, and we'll close up here shortly. You just tell me we got to go. One thing that I do have is you do, of course, a YouTube channel, but the way I understand it, that channel is long form in some ways, and of course books are long form, and of course movies are long form, and in today's world where you have that, the every 3-second switch, the swipe, is that something that you think is going to get harder and harder to compete with, or at some point everyone wants to just sit down and zone out and don't have to use their index finger to swipe?
I had a similar conversation with my wife the other day. I think the beautiful thing about my YouTube channel, Something Sinister, is that the motto is exploring horror in fact and fiction, and given that sort of broad mission statement, it is capable of flowing with the time. So whether that's movies, whether that's online horror, whether that's true crime, it can always sort of, I guess, be flexible to fit whatever I guess the trend is. But I was actually, what I was talking to my wife about was, I had this conversation with someone who had pitched the idea of me doing short form content, TikTok, stuff like that. And not that I'm against it, but it's just because I'm primarily a one-man operation, doing all of it on my own. I don't want to think about other platforms, stuff like that. But the demographic for my channel is primarily, I believe, people in their 20s to late 30s, and I think that is maybe the final generation of people who are okay with watching an hour-long, I guess, sort of documentary-esque video on YouTube. I think perhaps all the ages prior to that are maybe more like short form. And don't get me wrong, I watch short form content and stuff like that, but I think I've been very blessed in that the attention span of my audience is perhaps
still there.
Still there.
I have it's funny though, because when I was younger, parents would tell, shut that off, go outside and play. Nowadays it's like, hey, put that phone down, come over and watch a movie with me. It's just to get them to sit down long enough to watch a movie. Even my wife, she's a I guess an elder millennial, but even her, especially because of what she does, so get her to sit down and actually watch. And it sounds like your wife enjoys maybe horror. You guys watch stuff together. Yeah.
So she's an actress. So in Sigil and Photo Negative,
cool.
She's in those.
Well, that's great.
So I kind of scored, getting married to an actress and being a film director.
Well, I have to say this, starting off, my wife is awesome and great, but she won't watch horror movies with me. So So again, if people want to watch, we're the shows that are coming up and the books. What are some, just real quick, the hook? Where are we going to be? What are we going to be looking at? Like a lot of excitement? Is it We don't said it's not paranormal, but is it psychological thriller or is it slasher? With the mix, just so we know what we're going into.
You're talking about the book?
The book. Yeah, I'm assuming that the books and the movies are going to have a similar feel, but maybe not.
So the book that I'm working on is. It's interesting because, kind of like I mentioned, with it being post-apocalyptic, it's like they eat you from the inside is very grounded in reality, like it's something that could potentially, happen. Whereas with this, it's much more, I guess, out of my comfort zone, in terms of like sort of. I want this post-apocalyptic, situation to feel real and tangible, but at the end of the day, it's I guess I'll tell you, it's not really that big of it deals with the rapture.
Cool.
So
yeah, that's good.
Something that a lot of people believe is going to happen. You know what I mean? So still, I guess, grounded in that way. Yeah.
So one of Tristan and I put him on it was not Black Mass. What was that one?
Midnight Mass.
Midnight Mass.
Very good.
Where it played a lot into the Christian beliefs, and it's kind of eerie. So, and I want to throw one more out there, just if you haven't watched it, Nefarious. I can't imagine Nefarious's budget being very big at all. It's just two guys sitting in a room, but it was a lawyer and a guy
TV
who
show?
was supposed to be demon possessed, and they were going to put him to death. And
it's a TV show or a movie?
it's a movie. It's called Nefarious, and
Nefarious.
My God,
okay,
that's awesome. So I'm going to definitely check out anything you send me, and I'm hoping to get into the book. So I'm guessing if I start reading the book, by the time you have the audiobook out, I'll be halfway through. Because
exactly.
But I'll nail that audiobook I'll get right away. So anything else, Tristan, that you had?
Nothing I can think about at the moment. It was really cool having you on.
Yeah, Jacob, thank you so much. We really do appreciate you taking the time, and tell your wife and family that we appreciate them giving you to us for an hour or so here. And best of luck. And I can't wait to see. I would like to definitely. This is something kind of new for me because this was kind of a pretty. I think you guys put this together in like 3 or 4 days, so I didn't have a lot of time.
Pretty quick.
Yeah. To start. When we got Butcher on, we had quite a time, and I listened through about 3 or 4 of his books to get a feel for it. So I'd like to maybe take a look at this and some of your other content, and then possibly do this again sometimes where I can kind of have a lot more questions.
Absolutely.
When I said nothing comes to mind, I meant nothing that can be discussed within like 3 minutes. I have a lot of
you're okay.
long form questions.
We are definitely long form here. We've had 3 and 4 hour podcasts. So.
Oh really? That's crazy.
Was our longest 4?
I think 3.5 hours. Something like
I think 3.5 is our longest.
I have a lot of people. I know a lot of different people. So and I love to talk. And like I said, there's so many. I wanted to talk to you about budgeting and how breaking into that, how you find the funding for things like this, and there's just so many questions that we left unanswered. If I was to do a movie right now, the budget would be I can maybe buy everybody lunch for showing up.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay. Well, Jacob, thanks again, man. I really appreciate it, enjoyed it, and I have a feeling I'm going to really enjoy your content. I'm going to start watching the channel too, so we'll get that out there. And
when you have your next book out, maybe we can have you on again, sort of
absolutely
kind of celebrate the next book.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Cool. And we'll put all your information. If you'll get that to Tristan, he'll make sure and add that to there. And then as soon as you get some release dates, we'll try to keep an eye on that. But if you remember to send it to Tristan, we'll make sure we plug all of those too.
Sure,
awesome.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Really appreciate it. Nice meeting you.